How's it going, everyone? Ryan here today with Off the Record Fantasy Football, the fantasy football podcast designed to help you dominate your league. And today, guys, we are getting into another mock draft. I thought it'd be fun. We've talked a lot about divisions, a lot about players we love, and a lot about players we hate. So now let's put that into practice and practice our skills, hone in on what we might see at a certain spot, and jump into a mock draft. So grab your paper, grab your pen, and let's go ahead and talk off the record. So guys, if you are not aware, I do also have a YouTube channel. It's RyeSquad. You guys can find the video version of this mock draft in most of the other podcasts. I try to get all of them on the YouTube channel as well, so you can find them there. I will do my best to describe how each pick shakes out, but without further ado, let's jump over to our handy dandy number generator. And if you guys remember, in the last one, we were picking number 12. So in this one, we are going to jump up to pick number 9, and it's going to change just a little bit of our strategy. Pick 9, we're getting maybe into the territory where Travis Kelce or maybe one of the tight ends becomes an option for us. But if you guys are unaware, we are doing a 12-team half PPR snake draft. We've got a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, a flex, and a couple bench spots. I am not going to do kickers and defense just because it extends the time. So without further ado, Sleeper says, are you sure you want to start the draft? Yes, Sleeper, I would love to start the draft. And Christian McCaffrey actually goes pick number 1 overall. I've increased the timer so I have more time to talk about everything too. But at pick 101 is McCaffrey, then Derrick Henry, and Jonathan Taylor falls to number 3. Jefferson going at 4.5 PPR. I can see it. Dalvin Cook at 5. Cooper Kupp at 6. Eckler all the way at 7, and then Najee Harris at 8. Unfortunately, I thought we were going to get our hands on Najee Harris here. But at this spot, I'm looking at a couple guys. Right off the bat, I'm looking at Jamar Chase or Joe Mixon. And it really depends on, with my next pick, where do I think I can go? I'm really feeling the Jamar Chase pick right here. I feel like it's the pick here at pick number 9 and 12 team, right? I feel like when we come back around at the 2.4 that we can get somebody pretty solid here. So I'm going to take Jamar Chase with the 9th overall pick. At 10 goes Devontae Adams. Chubb goes to 11. Diggs at 12. And then in the second round, we have Kelce, Lamb, and Mixon. So there goes Joe Mixon. Almost got a top running back. I love Joe Mixon this year. I think he's going to be ridiculously solid. I think he's going to be a top 10 running back. And to pair him with a guy like Jamar Chase, who's probably locked into a top 5 wide receiver. I know you're stacking Cincinnati there, but I still think it'd be a worthwhile stack. But that's not how it fell. There are 4 running backs available to us right now. It's DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley, and Aaron Jones. We could also go for Mark Andrews, but I really want to lock in that star number 1 running back to go along with our number 1 Jamar Chase. Heck, we got a locked in top 5 receiver who's got tremendous upside. I think we can go ahead and get something a little bit safer with our next pick. And I think I want to go with Aaron Jones. I've really loved the idea. I've recently dropped the NFC North podcast for you guys. If you haven't listened to that, check it out. But Aaron Jones is a guy that I really like this year. I think he's a really safe top 10 back. Alvin Kamara, he's got a court date rescheduled for Thursday, September 29th. I don't want to deal with that in the middle of the season, right? You're talking the heart of the fantasy season. I don't want to deal with him going to court. DeAndre Swift, I like him. I just don't think here as my second pick. I'd like somebody a little bit more surefire, gonna be at RB1. Saquon's upside's intriguing, but I have Chase. If I gone and taken Mixon with my first pick, I may be looking at Saquon here to stack because I've got a solid RB1 and Saquon as my RB2 would be ridiculous. But I'm going to go with Aaron Jones. I think his pass catching upside is there. I think he's the most talented weapon they have on that offense. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is elite. Aaron Jones, he trusts him. They've been playing together. He gets those red zone opportunities. He just is kind of a guy that can do it all. Last year finished as running back 10. back-to-back years, though, before that, where he finished as a top 5 running back, did deal with some injuries last year, and he's super efficient. So the emergence of A.J. Dillon doesn't particularly scare me. So I'm going to go ahead and start my draft with Jamar Chase and Aaron Jones at the 1-9 and the 2-4, respectively. We've got Saquon going next, then Mark Andrews, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, and Alvin Kamara drops all the way to 2.9. Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen, and Mike Evans round out the second round. In the third round, Team 1 stacks Mike Evans and Ezekiel Elliott. Then A.J. Brown, Leonard Fournette, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen, Patrick Mahomes, T. Higgins, and Kyle Pitts goes right before us. And we have an interesting dilemma here. There's a ton of running backs available, and I'm not really loving the wide receivers. I mean, I guess I could reach a bit. I'm looking down the board. We're about, as far as ranks are concerned, there's about 8 guys in between here, and I could take a guy like Michael Pittman, but I think he might get back to me, and that's where I'd want to go. We could go crazy and take Justin Herbert, who I think is going to be the quarterback 2 without a shadow of a doubt, and I think he's the only guy in the league that's got a chance to push Josh Allen out of that QB1 spot. But I don't really like going with those 1Z, 2Z positions, right? A tight end or a quarterback in my first 3 picks. I like to get a core of a team. And I think I'm looking at a guy here who's probably the last of his group, James Conner. He's the last of the guys that I think can still return low-end RB1 value. Yeah, I know he had a ridiculous amount of touchdowns last year. I don't expect it to continue with it, but he had a ton of volume in the red zone, and I love red zone touches, and I'm drafting him as my RB2. I've got a low-end RB1 and a high-end RB2. Pairing him with Aaron Jones, still have my elite wide receiver 1 in Jamar Chase. And guys, I got to say, I'm absolutely loving the way this draft is shaking out. So we are going to go ahead and take James Conner. The next picks go David Montgomery, George Kittle, Justin Herbert, Cam Akers, Breece Hall, and Terry McLaurin. And he fell back to us, guys. We are looking at the guy I wanted. I want Michael Pittman. You guys know I'm not a huge fan on Deontay Johnson. He's one of my hates for the tier that he's in. I don't want him here. I think he's too risky. And I think Michael Pittman is just an absolute phenom. I think he's got a potential to be a low-end RB1 or wide receiver 1. I think he could be a great lock it in, without any worry, wide receiver 2. So I'm going to take him to pair with Jamar Chase. And I'm coming out of the first 4 rounds with Aaron Jones, James Conner, Jamar Chase, and Michael Pittman. I don't have a ton of those flashy names that are going to be absolute juice players. And I like to, the juice players to me are those guys that, hey, you need a little juice in your lineup this week. You're not sure if you can get over the hump against this team. This is the kind of guy that can absolutely blow up and win you a week, right? So I don't have anybody like that yet. James Conner is probably the closest thing I have to that right now. Obviously, Jamar Chase, he's probably as boom of a player as you get, but that's kind of what you're expecting from him for where he's being drafted. But I got a really solid 1-2 in both running back and wide receiver. So after Michael Pittman goes J.K. Dobbins, who is another guy I'm loving as the reports start to come out that he's going to be ready for day 1, ready for week 1. I'm very excited about that with J.K. Dobbins. We'll see. Obviously, it's early in the preseason, but we'll see how he comes back from that ACL tear. Then Antonio Gibson, Deontay Johnson, Travis Etienne, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Darren Waller, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, Mike Williams, Josh Jacobs, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, a run on quarterbacks here, Cortland Sutton, Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown, and we are back on the clock, and we are looking at some very interesting names. Elijah Mitchell of the San Francisco 49ers, if he is the lead back in San Francisco and they don't just continually flip-flop who they're using, which I think is definitely a possibility. I mean, the Fantasy Pros is reporting, they're saying he is the clear-cut number 1 in San Francisco. That's off of a beat reporter's report. But he seems to be the clear-cut so far. He was 26th in PPR last season. And he's just going to get an insane amount of volume. He's a great player, right? And he's going to be my flex player. I kind of like that idea because as we look down the board, there's some wide receivers that I'd like to take my shot on. So if I can get my 3rd running back early here, I see Allen Robinson here, though, and that's really tempting. Allen Robinson in that offense, he could be what Robert Woods was last year and that before the injury, and that's a phenomenal pick as your wide receiver 3 flex position. But I think I just kind of like to lock up that running back spot. If I get Jones, Connor, Mitchell, yeah, I don't have any of those studs like the Najees, the Ecklers, the Cook, Taylor, McCaffrey, right? But I have a ridiculous just stall of great running backs, and I could still get a good wide receiver or even a good tight end coming back to me here since I'm close to the turn. So I'm going to get the player that I want the most, the position I need the most help with, and the position with the most depth still on the board is wide receiver. And sure enough, one of the three wide receivers that I wanted came back to me. So we took Elijah Mitchell at 5.9, and then it goes Amari Cooper, Miles Sanders, Brandon Cooks, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Allen Robinson, A.J. Dillon. I was a little bit disappointed because I thought Allen Robinson might fall back to me. You know, I was really torn between him and Elijah Mitchell. But we do have another wide receiver here that I really, really like here as my wide receiver 3. I could end up going tight end here, which might be something I look to do because at this point we're talking about, I've got my flex spot since we only have one flex. I've got my wide receiver set. I've got my running back set. I don't have a tight end and I don't have a quarterback. I love the idea of, though, grabbing Chris Godwin with this pick. To come out of the first 6 rounds having Aaron Jones, James Conner, Elijah Mitchell, Jamar Chase, Michael Pittman, and Chris Godwin is a draft I'd feel really, really good about. But a guy like Jalen Hurts is here in the 6th round. Dalton Schultz is here in the 6th round. Now, quarterback is something I would stay away from. But there are plenty of guys that there's a huge drop off to me in this tight end hierarchy. We've got Dalton Schultz and TJ Hawkinson. I still think Schultz is better than Hawkinson, and I think Schultz is still a top 5 guy. And then it falls off another 20-ish picks before you get Dallas Goedert. And then it falls off another 15 picks before you get to Dawson Knox, Zach Ertz. And then you're really just swinging on some tremendous upside. So I'm going to pass on wide receiver because I know that in the 7th, 8th rounds, I can still get a wide receiver I'm liking, you know, the Juju Smith-Schusters, the Rashad Batemans, the Gabe Davises. I could get a DeAndre Hopkins who's suspended, right? Maybe I go after Devontae Smith. It starts to get a little thinner, so I'm going to hope that one of these guys comes back, but it's nowhere near as thin as tight end. So we're going to go with Dalton Schultz from Dallas, my favorite tight end to get just because I think the value is ridiculous. Jalen Hurts goes right after he does, though. Then Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, TJ Hawkinson, Damian Harris. We get 4 wide receivers in a row here with Michael Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, and Drake London. And then we've got Kareem Hunt, Kenneth Walker, Juju, Rashad Bateman, Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Hopkins, and Gabriel Davis. So the wide receivers I wanted kind of fell off the board here. But I do like the idea of maybe taking a wide receiver like Devontae Smith. I still think he's going to have a great season. He was a wide receiver 29 in PPR. He's coming in as my 3rd wide receiver. I'd feel very happy about that. I'm avoiding Treylon Burks. I'm avoiding almost any piece of the Tennessee Titans offense, but I'm avoiding Treylon Burks. And then the next wide receiver is Devontae Smith. Elijah Moore in New York seems to be the number 1 receiver. That's what the Athletics' Zach Rosenblatt is saying. We'll see if that holds true. Garrett Wilson's a great talent. Corey Davis is probably kind of out of the picture at this point. Braxton Berrios is still going to have a role maybe in the slot. But Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, that's a really exciting 1-2 punch when it comes to speedy, athletic, young wide receivers. So I could take the shot there. I don't feel as confident about it. And I see a lot of running backs still too that I would like to take. So I think there's 3 quarterbacks on the board. Team 12 already has a quarterback. Now, if Sleeper's AI doesn't go rogue on me, I can safely assume that I will get one of the 3 quarterbacks, being Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Tom Brady. I feel like I can get any of those guys coming back. I don't know if I can say the same thing about Devontae Smith. I doubt anybody's doubling up on quarterback. And like I said, Team 12 took Herbert at the 3-4 turn. They're probably not wasting their 7th pick with another quarterback. So I'm going to take Devontae Smith. I think he's going to be, he's got a chance to be a low end wide receiver 2, or more if AJ Brown misses time. And as I predicted, Quarterback did fall to me. They went back-to-back. Prescott went at 7-10, Wilson at 7-11, but they took Treylon Burks and Tony Pollard at the turn. Cordero Patterson, Garrett Wilson coming back to me here. And the guy I wanted, the value pick, Tom Brady. I mean, if you guys are watching on the YouTube channel, you can see his sleeper stats. He's been playing for so long, sleeper doesn't even have the stats for half of this guy's career. But I think he can safely provide you top 7 numbers. I'm taking him as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th quarterback off the board. The 10th quarter? Are you kidding me? Like, come on. 10th quarterback off the board. That seems kind of silly for a guy that I think is top 7 at least. Even with a 10% reduction, I think he's going to be a QB6, QB5, and I'm going to be really happy with this pick, considering it fills out the rest of my roster, and I have a high upside player on my bench. So Tom Brady, welcome to the squad, and we have officially gotten our starting lineup completed. We've got Tom Brady at quarterback, Aaron Jones and James Conner at running back, Jamar Chase, Michael Pittman at wide receiver, Dalton Schultz at tight end, and Elijah Mitchell at our flex, with Devontae Smith also chilling there on the bench. After Tom Brady, though, we've got Renfro, Elijah Moore, Devin Singletary, Chase Edmonds, Rashad Penny, which I think is a great pick, Zach Ertz, Tyler Lockett, Aaron Rodgers finishes out the 8th round. In the 9th round, Dawson Knox, Chris Olave, Matt Stafford, James Cook, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Robert Woods, Melvin Gordon, who you guys know I love. And now it's time to take a look. We've got an even amount of receivers. We have an even amount of running backs. And now it's time to take a look at the guys that I think could be great upside picks. And I'm staring at Sky Moore here. I'm staring at Chase Claypool. But man, do I just kind of want to dip my toes in that Green Bay Packers wide receiver room. And I'm staring at the guy on the top of the board here, Allen Lazard. Now, I'm not convinced he's going to be the guy. But if I was a betting man and I had to make the odds, I'd give Allen Lazard the best odds to come away with the most amount of targets in this offense. We'll see through preseason how this changes, but my thought process is here. Grab my 4th wide receiver in Allen Lazard, get a potential wide receiver 1 there on a great offense. Maybe not fantasy wide receiver 1, but a wide receiver 1 for his team. And I'm getting him in the 9th round. Oh, and by the way, his quarterback's Aaron Rodgers. I'd gladly sign up for that. After Allen Lazard goes, we have Ramondre Stevenson, Pat Freiermuth, Trey Lance at the turn, Chase Claypool as well, who you guys know I love the value pick, that 10th round value for Chase Claypool. I mean, I'll take that swing any day of the week. Russell Gage and Sky Moore. So Sky Moore doesn't make it back to us, unfortunately, but that's okay. There's some other guys here that are pretty interesting. And there's one final guy that I think has tremendous upside that I think can establish himself as a starter and turn into a guy that I can lean on if I need to put him in my flex or if I need an injury replacement. And the last guy that could still carve out a starting role for a position of need. I'm not taking a second tight end. I'm not taking a second quarterback. I'll deal with that when it comes up. The guy I'm going to go after here is Dameon Pierce. I'm passing over a guy like Michael Carter or Kadarius Toney. I really like the idea of Kadarius Toney. The injuries, questions, I don't know how I feel. And I already have Lazard and Devontae Smith to pair with Chase and Pittman, right? So I've got my 4 wide receivers pretty much set. I think I'd like to take a 4th running back here as well. You don't always have to take your players like, oh, I took 4 wide receivers. Let me take my 4th running back. Like, it just depends on where the value's falling. But he's not going to get back to me. Dameon Pierce, the rookie for the Houston Texans, is listed there on the depth chart. I don't really care. It's preseason week 1. It's the Texans' unofficial depth. Come on. Like, they're just doing this. He's got to earn it. Everybody's doing this. James Cook is listed as a 3rd running back on the Bills depth chart. Does that mean I think he's going to get the 3rd most opportunity? No, not by a long stretch. So I think Dameon Pierce is going to clearly be the number 1. Yes, it's going to be part of a bad offense. Yes, it's not going to be fantastic stats. But if he can even be a high-end RB3, I'm satisfied with that in the 10th round as my 4th running back. Sign me up for that all day long. After I take Pierce, it goes Carr, Michael Carter, Mike Gesicki, Christian Watson, Isaiah Spiller, Kadarius Toney, Alexander Madison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So there's that swing on that Kansas City offense. Kirk Cousins, who I am very happy with. Oh, look, Team One's taking my advice from the NFC North podcast the other day. They took Rodgers in the 8th and they took Cousins in the 11th. What a 1-2 stack. I love that. Rachaad White then goes at the second pick of the 11th round. Then Cole Kmet, Ronald Jones, James Robinson, Tua Tagovailoa, Nyheim Hines, and Tyler Boyd, who I think is just always so underrated and underappreciated. I mean, the guy's kind of like locked in as a high-end wide receiver 3, right? He's a really solid flex play for you pretty much every week. And here we go. There's some interesting names now that we're swinging on the upside. Michael Gallup, who's on the pup right now, could be very interesting. We'll see how he comes back from that. Michael Gallup has always gotten some hype, never really put it together. His only season where he caught the ball 60 times, he finished as the 22nd wide receiver in PPR. So there was that one season of hope. Other than that, he had 105 targets in 2020 and he finishes the wide receiver 38. That's if you're getting 100 targets, man, you got to do better than wide receiver 38. So I'm out on Michael Gallup, especially coming off an injury. Don't need a second tight end in Hunter Henry. Jarvis Landry's available, who could be interesting. He's just not really that great. Tyler Algier, who is a guy that I think could really carve out a significant role in this backfield. I think there's going to be a lot of rushing attempts, and I think Cordero Patterson would cede a lot of ground. I think Cordero Patterson being 31, he could be a guy that we see slow down or just doesn't start off so hot and they turn to the rookie. And if the rookie's got a little juice in a game or two, there's Darrell Henderson here as well. But I think a guy that I might look at here, we're looking a little bit further down, is Jameson Williams. I like the idea of Jameson Williams here. I think when he comes back, he's a guy I can stash, right? He's going to be my 5th wide receiver. I think for a guy that I could end up starting in my flex for the rest of the season, I'll take that here in the second last round. So we are going to take him: Hunter Henry, Michael Gallup, Algier, Henderson, Myers, Albert Aquagbanunum. I don't exactly know how to say his name. I hope I didn't butcher it too poorly. And then we are now back on the clock with our final pick of the day. We're looking at Jarvis Landry, Justin Fields, Marlon Mack, Rondale Moore, Kenny Galladay, Deshaun Watson, Irv Smith, Jahan Dotson, George Pickens, Kenneth Gainwell. And I kind of want to go 200 IQ and take a guy like Kenneth Gainwell, who flashed some promise and everything. I don't think it's really, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to be easily dropped, which is not always a bad thing. In the last pick of your draft, you want to get somebody who you can easily drop for the next hot stud that you can pick up off the waiver wire, right? But the guy I think that I can do that with is potentially Rondale Moore. With DeAndre Hopkins out for 6 weeks, Marquise Brown's situation in question, AJ Green, I'm going to say he's washed at this point, guys. There's really nobody else to catch the ball. I mean, if Marquise Brown is there, sure, but it's a passing offense. It's a high-powered offense. So I'm going to take the second wide receiver, and if he can get himself a legitimate role before DeAndre Hopkins comes back, I definitely think this could turn into a good pick. And guess what? If he flops and all of a sudden isn't getting any looks and they're only throwing to Marquise Brown and James Conner, sure, I'm stacking Arizona here, but I think the upside's there for a guy like Rondale Moore, who had a ton of buzz last season. And he only finished as wide receiver 67. So that's why he's going where he is. But that is our final pick. And that is going to end this draft. The last couple picks, I'll read them off to you guys. Why not? Jarvis Landry, Justin Fields, Marlon Mack, Irv Smith, David Njoku, Kenneth Gainwell, Kenny Galladay, and Noah Fant. So guys, this has been a bit of an interesting experience. I come from a 10-team league. I do half-point PPR, but picking 9th here, a little less favorable than picking at the turn at 12. Like we did in our last one, hoping we can get like it to say 4 when I do try it out again in the future here. But I'm loving these mock drafts, guys. Our final team is Tom Brady as our quarterback. I love the value there in the 8th round. Aaron Jones and James Conner. I think that's a very solid. I definitely don't think it's going to be a running back committee there that I'm upset with at any point this season. There's not a ton of boom potential, I'd say. James Conner's probably got a bit more than Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones is going to be very consistently top 10 running back. I think James Conner can be a mid to high end RB2. And if everything goes right, he's going to be a low end RB1, a top 10 back again. So I could potentially get 2 top 10 backs. We'll see. I don't believe James Conner can do it again. But again, I can't predict the future. So who knows? Our 2 wide receivers are Jamar Chase and Michael Pittman. I love it. I love the fact that I took Jamar Chase in the first round and didn't feel locked into that running back. You can still get a good running back core, guys, without taking a running back in the first round. I commend anybody that takes Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp at the 4th pick. Because after you get beyond those first 3 guys, in my opinion, the McCaffrey, the Taylor, and the Eckler, it starts to get questionable, right? I love Dalvin Cook, so I'd take him at 4. Najee Harris is very safe, but I don't see him really being that as good as last year, right? Most of his volume came from Big Ben. We'll talk about that later. I just think that if you take a wide receiver in the first round, especially if you're in the back half of this first round, you can really get a well-rounded team, right? Like, taking a look at team 1, they got McCaffrey, Evans, and Elliott. I probably would have taken Fournette, but you guys know I love Fournette, or even Debo, right? You could double up on those, but they went wide receiver heavy. So team 1, if you guys are listening on the podcast, is Christian McCaffrey in the first round, Mike Evans in the second round, Zeke in the third round, and then 4 receivers in a row for them in the 4, 5, 6, 7. They went Waddle, Metcalf, Mooney, London. So they really were like, okay, we're going to get our 2 running backs and then hammer wide receivers. And that is definitely an option because there's a lot of receivers. Like we said, Darnell Mooney at the end of the 6th, he's your wide receiver 4, right? They only have 2 running backs though, but they're pretty solid in McCaffrey and Elliott. So our team though, with Pittman and Chase, like I love the Chase pick because I still think we've got really good running backs even without taking one in the first round. And I think we have ourselves a true game changer in Chase. And we still got Michael Pittman after going back-to-back running backs. Dalton Schultz is our tight end. I think it's great. I think, he's going to be solid. I think he's going to return value for where he's being drafted. He finished as tight end 3 last year. Does he do it again? I'm not sure. I think the target volume will be there. I don't see his role decreasing in this offense. He scored 8 touchdowns, maybe a couple less, right? But 800 yards on 80 catches. I think he's got all the opportunity in the world to do so. I think he could be a top 3 tight end again, definitely top 5. So I'm very happy to get him there in the 6th round. Then our flex position is Elijah Mitchell. And if we can believe the reports, you got to trust that you believe some of these beat reporters, that they know what's going on. And Elijah Mitchell is going to be the clear-cut running back 1. I know Trey Lance takes away a bit of that, but is Jeff Wilson or Trey Sermon, is Elijah Mitchell going to stay healthy? I think we can start trusting Elijah Mitchell in a San Francisco 49ers running back, and I think it's going to provide great value. And if it doesn't, listen, he's my RB3. I only need him to do what he did last season, which is 26th in PPR. I only need him to do that to return really, really good value for me. And then I took some swings on the bench. We've got Devontae Smith as our 3rd receiver. He was really good last year. He finished as wide receiver 29. That's a high-end wide receiver 3. That's where I took him, right? And I think going into his 2nd year, it's only going to be improvement, especially with A.J. Brown coming to town, taking that top-end pressure off of him. Allen Lazard is a huge swing, right? We don't know how this Packers offense is going to look. But the fact that Allen Lazard could be the number 1, I like the idea. I like the sound of that, right? We'll see if Christian Watson's okay to go. Romeo Doubs. We'll see if the buzz is real. I think Allen Lazard is still the safest bet, and I kind of wanted a safe upside swing. Kind of counterintuitive there. Doesn't make much sense, but you guys know what I mean. Taking the number 1 wide receiver, who I think it is, who's the safest bet to be number 1, but he's got a high upside there in fantasy. Dameon Pierce then in the 10th round, who I think could be the lead back in the Texans offense. We'll see how good it is. It's not going to be good, right? But he could still provide some value. Jameson Williams, we'll put him on IR spot if we have an IR, or we'll just keep him on our 5-man bench here. I think he's going to be a really, really interesting piece when he does in fact come back. We'll see when he does actually come back, but I think he's going to be great when he does. I loved him. I love the player and the prospect, and I think he could be phenomenal for fantasy. So, and then we took our final swing of the night, and it was Rondale Moore. I think without DeAndre Hopkins in a fast-paced attacking style offense, who else are they throwing the ball to? I mean, AJ Green, sure. Andy Isabella, maybe. But I think Rondale Moore with no DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 weeks could establish himself as a role. And then after those 6 weeks, things are bound to shake out on the waiver wire. Maybe I end up dropping Lazard because he's done nothing. Maybe I end up dropping Pierce and I can find a guy, right? But there's some pieces that I can shuffle, and I think it's a pretty darn good team. I'm pretty happy with it. I'd be satisfied if this was my team coming out of it. So guys, let me know what you might have done differently. Is there a player that I'm looking at too highly or not highly enough of? Let me know on the question and answer feature on Spotify or on the YouTube comments. Let me know there as well. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a 5-star review. It really does mean a lot to the podcast and to me personally. Thank you guys. And if you are new, make sure to subscribe so you can hear all this great fantasy advice to help you dominate your league. But that's all the time I have for this one, guys, and I will talk to you in the next one.